Hey everyone, it's Nick Ottinger here with Team Conti Sim Performance. This week I am doing our 87 Winter NIS series at Phoenix to 2008 layout. So the one that has a lot less grip than the new one. But I'm gonna do a 15 lap run here, kind of explaining what I'm doing, what not to do in this type of car and track combination. And we're gonna roll straight into it and just try to do the first lap pretty competitive and show you how we can kind of mess it up. So let's get into having make sure our entry's good, stable on entry, get off the brake, make sure we're under the seam, get back to the throttle pretty aggressive, just straighten the exit, make sure we cut down to this curbing, not hitting it, make sure our lift point's good, braking smooth, so we can transition off the brake easy. Make sure we got the car pointing back down to the yellow line and hold the yellow line. Now we go exit off the dash marks. All right, so that's the first lap. That's pretty comfortable, I would say. Now let's try getting off the brake here and running a different line. We're letting it roll too early, and we didn't cross that middle seam right there. So you can see the time loss that I had just compared to the first lap. We need to make sure we just don't let it roll too early. And the same thing for turn 3. We get in there pretty smooth, get off the brake, don't get it actually pointed back down below the seam to the yellow line, and now I'm just exiting too high. So half a second essentially I lost that lap. We need to refine that. Got our entry pretty good, stay on the brake, transition off of it, keep it down so we can cross that seam and get this car to actually still turn and bite. Now this track realistically has too much fall off, with this combination. So you're gonna have a lot of inefficiency of you're gonna feel like you're going through the front tire. You can't turn, but it's really just line sensitive what we need to attack the track with. So can't make sure we're going on entry too aggressive. If we do that, we're just gonna be sliding the rear because the rear is pretty light. It's a lot of dynamic change in this car. The front sits down, the rear picks up. These tires get a little greasy on entry if we carry too much speed. That's why we just got to be in control. Stay at least to where we're just letting the car turn without having to actually compromise our center and throttle phase. So we want to just slow everything down, let this car continue to turn, use this seam as much as we can. I missed it there a little bit, so I carried a little bit too much speed where the front tires didn't want to grip forward, so I need to back that up a little bit. I need to back that up for turns 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 here. Right now I'm just carrying too much capability and I'm just getting myself offline. So let's try to refine this again. Let's slow that up. Make sure we hit the target how we need to. Get our entry good. Slow it up. Use a little more brake. Get it down below the seam. There we go. We got a lot more potential to get to the throttle now. It's a lot easier where we're using that actual seam to help pivot the car. Now, can't overdrive turn 3 here. Let's make sure we get it up a little bit, get it cutting back down, get back to the throttle. Look how efficient that is as far as just getting it back down and creating time from center to mid-exit. That's going to help us longevity-wise because we're actually managing our capability of turn and a straighter exit. Instead of using so much wheel on exit, we're not compromising our tight condition or loose condition. We're just keeping the car efficient, which is our goal here. We got to keep it balanced. 9 times out of 10, you got to figure out how the balance of the car is and just drive to that balance and then try to work some changes into it. So that's our goal. So we just completed halfway through our 15 lap run here. I'm gonna probably try showing you how aggressive you could be on entry and how compromised that can hurt, because you're just sliding on entry and that's going to hurt your center. So I'm going to go in here a little aggressive, a little too much. I got to just do too many wheel corrections here. So now I got to compromise my center, slow it up. That hurt, just my stability here to get to the exit how I wanted to. Same thing for turn 1. I can pretty much go in there too aggressive, hit the wrong line and slide. Still a little too high right there. But my center was much actually better because I slowed it up. I recognized I was going to miss it, so I just backed it up a little bit. I was going to turn 3 here. Got to make sure we're getting it to turn. See how it helped. I'm not lighting the throttle up just 100% just to do it, letting it actually continue turning. So let's try to actually run a correct line here. Make sure we backed our center up. It's a better exit of 2. You see how that high angle actually helped my exit of 2 time-wise. Problem is I didn't get it to cut soon enough, so it's another thing I still have to adjust driving. Tried a little higher entry here, slowed my center, get it to cut sooner. Getting the throttle a little more aggressive, straighter, and just exit as straight as possible. Let's try changing that up to have a lower entry into turn 1 here. So I'm across the seam where I want. Crossed it, see how much more potential I have running this bottom line compared to that middle lane in 1 and 2. I'm getting it to turn and I'm crossing that seam and using that capability. Right now I'm actually getting a little loose on entry still, so that means I'm just carrying a little bit too much speed with too much brake. So I need to refine that. Still need to refine some adjustments on driving. Gonna try a higher entry to 1. Back this up. Carry a little more exit speed. Create a little loose condition off of 2 there. I tried being aggressive with the throttle, then open the wheel up before I needed to. Get off the brake. See how I got off the brake. Had to get back on it because I was carrying too much center speed for the front tires to turn. Had to fix that as well. Right, let's have a little lower entry here into 1 compared to last lap. Just get a smooth line. Hurt my exit, but I felt way more in control doing that. Way more control keeping the actual straight drive off the corner, even if it hurt my time that lap. So I was perfectly fine running that line, keeping some tire life on it, making sure I'm not rushing 100% throttle again. So that's my objective, make sure I'm not rushing 100% throttle. Don't want to light the right rear up because I'm not going to have any stability on entry if I do for exit. And if I light it up right now, it's just going to go through the tire, just cause it to spin, and I'm not going to create any drive. What that's going to hurt even more is on entry. I'm not going to have the grip to keep myself stable on entry. So this is lap 14. About to close it up here with 1 more lap, and just try to actually run a pretty effective lap here. Make sure I get my entry good. A little aggressive on entry. Partial throttle, full throttle now. Use the banking on exit of 2. Make sure I can hit my targets in the 3 here. Easy, I'm not turning too much wheel. That's exactly what I wanted. Still a little loose off of 4. It's really easy to be loose off of 4 there. So hit my targets like I wanted now, all right? So now what I want to do is show you some outside perspective, right? Let's get some outside perspective of what we can do. And let's slow it up. Let's go back here a couple laps. Go to cockpit view. And I'll show you, I would say on this last lap, what my target is transitioning through a run, right? Now, I was pretty aggressive on entry. And what you can adjust driver-wise here is your brake balance, right? You know, you move your brake bias, you know, more towards the front. You feel you need more front brake. But now you're at a risk in this combination of car there where you use too much brake pressure, you're just going to lock the left front up. So, which is why it's paramount for you to, in my opinion, lift earlier and then brake as straight as possible, okay? So let's look at this. I'm pretty aggressive with a lot of peak pressure, right? You see how I get to 70%? And then you can see once I started trailing off and I needed to add wheel input to the left, let's slow this up a little bit. See how I'm adding wheel input to the left to get into the corner? Now that dynamic shift's changed where the rear is getting up higher and the nose is setting down. And once I carry that much entry speed, I had to balance that car technique and balance out by releasing the brake pedal just a little bit. So I can actually get the balance of getting into the corner as straight as possible without carrying too much speed, right? So that's something we just don't, we have to remind ourselves of in this combination, just not to overdrive entry, because it's very important. We got to make sure we hit our entry correct with the right speed, make sure we hit the center correct with our right angle, and carrying the angle as far as we need to. So let's slow this up. See how I get in there pretty straight. I'm not actually loose when I land into this, that banking. So now I'm crossing the seam. This is the seam I reference, right? You can actually get down to the bottom if you want to the yellow line, perfectly fine. But that comes at a risk of you needing to open the wheel up sooner and power down with more throttle input, and that breaks you even more free when you're crossing this seam again, okay? So that's why I like to just kind of straddle it with the right side tires and manage my exit angle. You can see I'm partial throttle, 100% throttle now, opening the wheel up to the exit of turn 2. And then we're going to go to turn 3. Let's slow this up. I like to do an earlier lift here than some. And you can see how I'm starting to lift before the logos here. Just before it. And that's keeping the car as straight as I can to make sure I'm getting to my braking phase as straight as possible, right? Because I'm actually still turning into the wall effectively, but I need to turn away from the wall. And this whole phase here is pretty flat. So if I carry too much speed, too much brake, in addition with too much wheel input, I'm going to break the car free, which is one of the areas on this combination where it will bite a lot of drivers because they think they need to attack entry so much to carry that entry speed, where you just need to have a good balance so you can find the point where you can trail off the brake in the center, so you can actually have the center that you want. So let's see, using just a limited amount of brake pedal, balancing about 25%, and just trying to work through this phase here. And I'm going to get off the brake at a certain point when I know I need the front end to turn. So at the stage of where I cross the seam now is where I know I need to still continue to have the front to cut down back to the yellow line. And now I'm off that brake pedal, right? Let's watch this. Off that brake pedal as soon as I cross it. And you can see I'm adding more wheel input to turn it back down. Not in a throttle yet, until I know I'm going to actually start wrapping my apex, the second part of apex, as close to this yellow line as possible. Because I need to make sure I'm crossing the seam without pushing the car tight and breaking it free with too much throttle. So I'm just trying to keep it consistent with partial throttle, holding this partial throttle all the way to the dash marks, still holding it until I know I can exit straight. Meaning exiting straight is where I put the wheel input straight to track towards the exit of turn 4 here, okay? And it's still a little bit loose. You can see I'm just fighting it a little bit. So I was a little bit too greedy in that avenue. Now, I'll show this to you in our chase perspective of this lap, right? And after that, I'll give you the fast lap time in chase perspective as well. So, see, full speed here, a little loose on entry. And we find this seam right here again. Perfect. It's what we want to put the right sides on that seam. And then just exit as straight as we can off of turn 2. It's very important to find your min speed in this car. Meaning you got to hit that target and just let it roll and continue to cut after the center to mid-exit. So exiting low here. Didn't get right on top. A little loose from the bumps. And then just exiting, again, as close to the wall as I can. So let's go back here to our first lap. And you can see I had some pretty big fall off here, right? But I deliberately ran a wrong line in the second lap to show you what would happen if you get off the brake too much and too early. So this is our money lap. So it's a pretty competitive lap for our track conditions that we're in right now. So pretty similar line that you just seen on lap 15, right? So it doesn't change too much. This track is line sensitive, but it's line sensitive to what handling conditions you have. Loose entry. I'm getting up the track a little earlier. Didn't cross the seam because I didn't need to on our money lap because I had all the grip that I needed. And you can see you got all the grip to stay 100% throttle there. So, yeah, I mean, that's effectively how we can attack this track. And if you want, I can tell you and show you a quality that if you overdrive entry is going to hurt you. So let me show you real quick. Let's not deliberately try to do it, but a compromise an area where you're just that committed, it's really easy to break the car free. So just want to showcase that while we're here. and we can see the detriment of truly how it hurts your entry and hurts your center, and then that hurts your exit, could just compromise your speed on exit. Let's go into turn 1 here. A little too much brake, a little over driving. Do not want to do that. Hit too much brake pedal like I referenced earlier in the video, right? So you don't want to achieve that. Go to turn 3. Too much. Can't do that. That's, again, too much brake. Now, let's try to go in there at too much speed in the sense where I'm not using enough brake, right? I want to do that in turn 3 because that's the lighter part of the track. I want to make sure I'm not hurting it on using too little brake, but we're going to see how much too much entry speed is. Ooh, I'm already loose. Look at that. So, too little brake, carrying too much entry speed. You can see how much that hurt the whole lap, because now I just need to catch the car. So those are some tangibles that we can't just overspeed entry, right? That's our objective, is just not doing the wrong things at a track like this. So I'm going to do about another at-speed lap, try to do a pit entry, just to showcase that a little bit. Ain't going to hurt to do a pit entry just to see how you can get off the track at the right point. But I don't think it's actually that difficult, and slowing it down. So let's do that. Let's get a good at-speed lap here. Obviously, we still have a lot of grip in these tires, being there actually 3 or 4 laps, but just got to go through it, or roll through it, and still attack our entry to pit road. Just may need to back your point where you're turning off the track, and let's get off the track. Pretty easy entry. I'd say that's pretty tame, but I don't really want to overspeed it, since we got to time our downshifts correct, right? So that's what I would just focus on, just making sure you're getting off the track at the right point, and then you can straight drive into your braking phase and worry about that. But that's going to do it for us here this week in the 87 series. And got any questions, please reach out. You guys have our Discord access. And if you got any questions, again, always here to help. Michael and myself are always here to help you guys when it comes to, trying to attack the track the right way with these videos and everything like that. So you guys have a good rest of your, week. And if you got any questions, I'll say it again, always here.